You put a Queensland jersey on Dane Gagai and he finds a way to score a try.
Cam Munster, he's going to be the one to watch.
He deserves a try.
Even though he's only young, he's such a big name, he's such a promising star.
Well, we've seen plenty of this in Origin. This is one of the best. McCartney will score. And Queensland celebrates. He smashed. That's a brilliant rugby league try.
Chip chase anyway? No? Something different, mix it up.
Pride is a wonderful thing for a footballer.
G'day and welcome to Queensland. Another big week of footy here, the home of State of Origin, even though we don't have the Shield boys, we're the home of State of Origin because every game for the rest of the future seems like it's going to be played here in Queensland. But start off on a serious note, Sammy, Jai Arrow kicked out of camp for breaking COVID protocols. Your thoughts on that whole debacle?
Yeah, a bit of a brain fart there by Jai Arrow, 100%. A decision which I'm sure he'd love to be able to take back, but he can't. And it'll be a tough lesson to learn for him going forward. You know, there was a lot of spotlight shone on him and continues to be shone on him as well. But I know that, you know, once he's served his time and he's paid his fine, he'll be working his butt off at the Bunnies to make sure, first and foremost, he can earn the respect back from a lot of people out there in the general public, but also in that Queensland favour as well, because I think he's a fantastic player and will continue to grow and develop to be a real leader in that Queensland team in the future. And, you know, I wish him all the best, and I hope that he's in a good headspace at the moment and he goes back and just concentrates on football.
Yeah, look, it's disappointing, but, you know, young men, he's 26, Jai, they're going to make mistakes. I mean, on the back of what happened with the Dragons, I think everyone was on notice.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's probably what makes it more disappointing. But, look, he's reacted, he's owned it. He said he put his head up, said, I was in the wrong, so he's going to pay a consequence. The Queensland team pays a consequence for it as well, but at the end of the day, it's done now. He's made a mistake, and I hope he learns from it.
Does he have a black mark against his name now in future? Will that count against him, do you think, for future selections?
I hope not. Talk to the selector, selecting panel. You know, because I do think he's a real forward leader within that team. I think, you know, as we progress into the future, you know, Christian Welch is getting older, Josh Papali as well. You need the guys like Jai Arrow, who's going to be that next kind of forward leader in the next couple of years. So hopefully it's not a black mark, but hopefully it's just a little bit of a red cross next to him. No black marker through his name at the moment. And yeah, I like you said, I'm sure he will go back and, you know, he's made a mistake, he's owned it, and he'll move on from here.
What about, does it show a lack of respect for the side or maybe lack of respect for the leadership? Say if Wayne Bennett was there or maybe Cameron Smith was coach, would that have happened, do you think, Lockie?
Oh, it's a tough question. Look, I just think when you're dealing with young men and you're dealing with guys that are, you know, he's been around the system for a little while, but they're going to make mistakes along the way. There are coaches that have an ability to prevent mistakes being made by these young men. I would say Wayne Bennett's in that category, but it's going to happen from time to time. You know, 12 Dragons broke the rules the week before that, so it's going to happen. You know, I think you try and minimise the amount of times it happens by having good culture, good leadership, but at times, there's, you know, something's going to, you know, pop up. I think, you know, I guess to the defence of the players, you know, you go from back out of the bubble, living a normal life, and then you get put back into the bubble. It's not easy to just sort of click your fingers and just totally change your lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
You get used to living a certain lifestyle, and when that gets taken away from you, it's not easy to just change completely.
Yeah, and it's definitely hard for both Lockie and I to comment on as well, because we've never been a part of what the guys are going through at the moment. You know, I kick and scream when I have to do a 4-day lockdown here in Brisbane. So, you know, some of the things that are put on the boys are pretty tough. And there are some really, really strong rules that have been put in place, and you know, sometimes you know, you don't know if we're in protocol 1, 2, 3, 4. So, you know, I do feel for Jai a little bit at the moment, and he has owned everything that he's done, and I think that's the best thing for him to move forward.
I think what's important is that obviously the Dragons situation reminded everyone what it's all about.
Yep.
And the Jai Arrow stuff reminded the whole competition and, what it's all about. So, if you were not one of those ones that made the mistakes, then hopefully you've taken notice of what's at risk here and you learn from it.
Yeah.
And probably what made it worse was the fallout was just as bad, the way they handle it or the lack of handling it. Paul Green comes out, reads a 16-second statement, walks off, refuses to answer questions. What do you guys think of that, how that was handled?
I think he was trying to do his best impression of Wayne Bennett and it didn't quite work. Wayne's got that steely look about him when he does it. I'm unsure if Paul knew what was going on at that point in time, whether it was still being investigated, whether it was open case, shut case, really unsure. So it didn't look great and the way it came across. But I'm unsure what happened.
Look, I think it's common practice when there's an investigation happening from the NRL Integrity Unit that, if you're a representative of the team or the club that's being investigated, you don't comment, right? I think in hindsight you would have just said that
we're disappointed, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but I think the players that were interviewed after were probably given the same information to not comment on it.
Yeah.
Now, the media, and I know you're the media, we're all the media, we all want to ask questions to get some insight into what's going on. But when you're in that team environment, you want to, I guess, create an environment where you're not making a distraction for your preparation.
Yeah.
And by not commenting on the details of it, I think maybe could have been handled differently in hindsight, but I didn't have an issue with Paul saying that he had no further comment because it's being investigated.
Yeah, it just seemed weird that he came out and said that after they'd finalised the fine and the punishment for it. I think he just could have fronted up and said, look, I'm really disappointed, that sort of thing. This is how it's changed the team. And then to have your players come up, it's almost as if he threw his players under the bus straight after it. And credit to Christian Welsh, you go back and watch the interview, he came off looking better than anyone else. But
yeah, look, in hindsight, Origin, there's a lot of pressure involved, right? So in hindsight, I think it could have been handled better. But it's done now and they need to move on. And out of all that, I'd give Christian Welsh a bit of a rap for the way he handled it,
Yeah.
And we finally know that the game's going to be played on the Gold Coast. Sam, is that in a way one of the worst things that could happen to Queensland? Because if they lose, it'll be a 3-0 loss in your home state. That's never happened before and it probably will never happen again.
Yeah, well, I actually called for this, to be honest. I think it might have been the second to last or maybe last segment after State of Origin 2. I said, might as well just play it on the Gold Coast. If New South Wales can beat us 3-0 in Queensland, hats off to them. That is the danger of having the game on the Gold Coast. But I really think the changes from Game 1 into Game 2, we wanted to see an intensity lift. We wanted to see a different attitude, and I thought we did. And hopefully, again, with a few of the selections we have for Game 3, we can see that improvement again. And we've got every chance and opportunity to sneak away with a victory down the Gold Coast, and I'd love to see it happen.
I think there's no doubt Freddie uses it as motivation.
Yeah.
Going to Townsville was like a game got robbed from us. There was a saying back in the Broncos days under Wayne,
Semi-final.
Let's send the crowd home early.
Yeah.
They would go and play at an away ground.
Yeah.
That was our motto. Let's send them home early. And you'd play at an away ground. If you saw them walking for the aisles at 10 minutes to go, you're going, how good's this?
Yeah.
So there's no doubt they use that as motivation. And and I'm not sort of making excuses here, but we're up against a really good team.
Yeah.
Nathan Cleary not being there obviously impacts them, I feel, but if you look at their back five, it's pretty special.
Yeah.
And what about coaching-wise, Paul Green? If he loses, is he out straight away? Is this determining his fate, the result in Game 3?
I think it's super hard to judge him off the one series.
Yeah.
It's been bit of a weird series as well. Again, a game in Townsville, a game on the Gold Coast for game 3. There's been
Injuries,
a lot of injuries.
yeah.
There's been a lot of players we haven't been able to select from. So I think he gets every chance and opportunity to go again next year. I think, hopefully, fingers crossed, circumstances are a bit different next year. With the way the world is and what's going on with this coronavirus stuff. I just think a settled season will really help him out.
Look, I think everyone, right from the coach and the coaching staff to the players, understand there's a little bit riding on this game. Because obviously pride's a big part of it, but as they say, you're only good as your last game.
Yeah.
So how they finish the series, I think, is pretty crucial.
And Lockie, were you part of the interview process for Greenie, or were you not that part for the
No,
camera?
no.
You do so many things, it's hard to keep track of.
Too many hats, mate.
Mate,
What about the talk that Fatty came out and said Billy Slater was actually offered the role and they went to the Paul Green? There's still a bit of non-clarity, I guess, over that situation.
I never heard anything like that. So, Fat might have got that sort of second, third hand, I don't know. Look, I knew Billy was interested in the job, and I knew Paul Green was the other candidate, so that's all I know. Yeah.
Do you think moving forward, Slater could be a good coach?
Yeah, look, you can just listen to him on the TV. He's got the smarts.
Yeah.
Yeah, he knows the game. He breaks it down. So, and I know if I look back to my experience with Mel, right? When Mel walked into the room, he had an aura. People listened to him, and that's because of his playing record at Origin level.
Yeah.
So if you transfer that into Billy, well, his record's just as good, if not better. So, it's, I guess, the only thing you would sort of ask is, some of these players that he'd be coaching have actually played footy with him.
Yeah.
And that's not always an easy gig.
To get the best out of him, yeah.
Well, I mean, he'll obviously, Billy would walk in a room and have the utmost respect of everyone in the room because of what he's done on the field. It's just, I don't know how many coaches. I think if you asked a lot of coaches that have coached players that they played with, whether it was easy or whether it was hard.
Yeah, the likes of, I think, like Trent Barrett, Dean Young had it when he was taking over the Dragons. Yeah, it's hard to transition being a young coach straight up to play.
You ask the King.
The King.
Where is
Bob? I'll have to go back to his desk.
I'm not saying it can't be done. I just think that's the one challenge you have when you've just finished playing and you can't go into coaching. But there's no doubt his playing record and his knowledge of the game and the way he sees the game, there's no doubt he's a coach.
Yeah. And another person firmly in the spotlight is the captain. As soon as we start losing and turn up the heat on everyone, DCE, is he playing for his future? If he loses this series, potentially will he lose the captaincy and maybe the halfback role?
I don't know if we can throw him under the bus just yet.
Well, he was the greatest Maroons captain of all time, less than 12 months ago.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we can take him out of the team, but it might be something to look at whether it is the captaincy. But I think that he's done a fantastic job in that Maroons jersey. It's been a tough series for DCE. You can definitely see in points throughout the game where he's really tried to turn the tide and really inspire his team. So, yeah, it's a tough call. I'm sure that we'll all sit down after this series is over and we'll assess everything and we'll, try and put it behind us and move forward to next year.
Yeah, I think it's high stakes Origin, right? So I remember when I was playing and we were getting beaten, before we had a bit of success. It doesn't take long for people to, if you're not winning, people want change. Right now, we're only talking 12 months ago that, the Queensland team had a miraculous victory.
Yeah. Well, less than 12 months.
Yeah, less than 12 months. And I think, it has been, there's a lot of reasons why it's been a challenging series. We again, you've got to give credit to, to Freddie and his team. They got a good team on paper and they've played well the whole series. And we haven't played to our potential. And I think this game coming up tomorrow night, I think that's what the Queenslanders, from where I sit, they just want to see them play well.
Yeah.
Right? we know the New South Wales will play well, but it's not about. We just don't. I think we want to get to the end of the 80th minute and be proud of what they displayed in terms of their performance. And look, I don't think Daly's. I don't think there's a risk there with Daly. It's just been one of those series where they just haven't been able to put it together.
Yeah.
And tomorrow night, I think there's a big opportunity for that to happen.
Yeah.
And I guess there's not a halfback out there who's his equal or better in Queensland at the moment. Sam Walker's maybe the next one coming up, but he's 2 or 3 years away from Origin. You think of halfbacks in Queensland.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's about other players putting pressure on him. I just think it's high stakes.
Yeah.
And people, probably got spoilt there for a little while from a Queensland perspective, and it's gone the other way for a bit. And, I just don't think you just throw the
baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Gus who turned around your Origin career? He wrote an article bagging you, and then we won 8 straight. Maybe Gus, get back out, start bagging us for.
Well, I think he's handled the criticism well. He's fronted up to the media, he's talked about it, he's articulated what he thinks, and I think what he's saying makes sense.
And if Queensland are to win, who needs to stand up? How does Queensland win this game?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think we need to dominate their forward pack, if anything, and even just that transition from our starting forward pack to the bench guys. If we can get that transition right, I think that we can really mix it with them, and then hopefully we can get the ball out wide to some of our strike players.
Yeah, I always, the first 2 games I thought that, up front needed to get their job done to lay a platform, and I thought they did that better in game 2, and there was a lot sort of made of the fact that we just had no continuity with our back line. So for me, that rests on the 6, 7 and 1.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to I reckon those 3 guys especially, it's not about they need to come up with the magic plays or the magic tries. It's just they need to know their structure and execute their structure, and I think that'll give us a much better performance.
Yeah.
Especially given New South Wales have inexperienced halves in Moses and Whiten, and we have 2 very experienced representative halves. Would that be a game plan to target their halves, put a lot of pressure on them early?
Oh, I think it was a game plan in game 1 and game 2. I mean, Mitchell Moses is making his debut, so he's going to be a little bit nervous as to someone like Nathan Cleary. I mean, I think Nathan Cleary is pretty... he's pretty resilient and unflappable.
Yeah.
So, but Mitchell Moses in his first game, I think Queensland. I think the key there is just to take time away from him, because I always say that's the difference between NRL and Origin is you just get less time with the football as a playmaker. So it'd be interesting to see how Mitchell goes. I'm not saying he can't do it, but first game in, you would be. We should be part of your game plan to apply as much pressure as you can.
Yeah.
And what about fullback? Lockie touched on it there, Sammy. Kalen Ponga, how excited are you to see him finally back in Origin?
Well, I think we saw him play for Newcastle, his first game back.
Killed the Cowboys, yeah.
And he absolutely played the house down. So it looks like he's been chomping at the bit to get back and out there on the footy field. And I'm really looking forward to seeing him out there in the Queensland jersey. He's one of those players who can break open a game. And, it's something we probably missed in game 1 and game 2, one of those real game breakers. I'd love to see him off the back of some Munster magic, or maybe off the back of a quick play of the ball from a Christian Welsh or someone like that. So I'm really excited to see KP out there, and pumped that we could pick him for game 3.
I think what he does, and I'm not taking anything away from Val Holmes, I think what he does is he brings in the hammer. He brings him in because he's very good at providing space for his outside man.
Yeah.
Val Holmes might see a bit of space, on the wing now.
Yeah.
Gay Guy hasn't really seen much quality ball. So again, I'm not sort of saying, Val Holmes couldn't do that, but I just think that's KP's strength.
Yeah.
Is he can get the ball to his outside man in space.
Yeah. He's got that speed, that goose step that kind of beats that inside man and draws that outside guy.
And it's not just Origin that Queensland's a home of now. The complete home of the NRL, with all those Sydney ACT-based clubs moving up here for potentially the remainder of the season. We've had Magic Round. Now we're going to have Magic Month or so up here in Queensland, Brisbane. Boys, your thoughts on that? How good will that be for the game here in Queensland?
Oh, it definitely means Lockie and I will be a little bit busier,
Yeah.
a lot more work for us. No, I'm really looking forward to it. And it's a great chance and opportunity for places like the Sunshine Coast, the Gold Coast, Brisbane, to, get that revenue stream happening again, maybe, bring some money into those businesses around those areas. So, I look at it in that sense, but, it's going to be great for all the young kids out there that love rugby league to know that it is going to be a magic month and maybe even longer where they can go out and watch their favourite players play and hopefully we can inspire the next generation.
Well, it's good for the Queensland economy. It's good for the game to continue. So
just make sure everyone follows the rules. That's it.
Yeah. So make sure you follow the rules, boys and girls, because I think the families are. So I went through homeschooling last year.
Yeah.
Sam, did you go through it?
Yeah, I struggled big time. I actually had to reteach myself how to read.
So that's, even though the families are coming up, homeschooling is still going to be a part of it. So I wish you all the best there, mums, and maybe the dads who've got to chip in from time to time, but that's not easy. But again, this time last year it was Melbourne, and only we had to relocate one team, Storm. So logistically a bigger challenge, but it's great that they can come here, and I think the key now for the game and for this state is to keep COVID out of here.
Yeah.
And it seems unlikely that we would go back to Sydney for quite some time during the spiralling rates of their COVID cluster down there. A grand final at Suncorp Stadium. They don't like mentioning it in Sydney because it's never been taken away from Sydney. Thoughts on that?
Why not? We've had 3 State of Origins up here this year, so we might as well have the grand final too.
Well, the AFL did it.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for, maybe more than a decade, about does Suncorp get a grand final? I think if that happens, it's an experiment that we've been talking about having. So if it happens, I think it's great to actually get an understanding of what it might look like.
Yeah.
And you guys played in grand finals. What would that feeling be like? It's highly unlikely the Broncos will make the grand final this year, but think back to the grand finals you played. Imagine playing that at Suncorp Stadium.
Well, just putting it out there, it'll be 2 Queensland teams playing in a grand final because they're all based up here now. But
unless Melbourne come up.
Oh yeah, that's true.
They're our 4th team anyway, so they count as Queenslanders.
Yeah, exactly. But
could you imagine that feeling?
That would have been absolutely brilliant, and I'm sure that I would have had 50 tickets instead of 20 tickets if the game would have been here at Suncorp. But like you said, if anything, it's an experiment to see what it would be like. So why not? Let's just put it out there right now and just say grand final in Brisbane at Suncorp Stadium. Let's just do it.
They love their footy here, so regardless of who's playing, they'll go. It's an event, right? And that's why
we'll shut down Caxton Street. Party will be on.
The amount of times people have predicted their team's going to make the grand final in Sydney and they fall short on the prelim and still go because they're going to watch the footy, but they're also going there because it's an event. So I think, I always say the best experience I ever had as a rugby league player was running out at Suncorp Stadium in a Maroons jersey. Yeah. Well, it'll be the same for those 2 teams that was competing in the grand final because the atmosphere there is unrivaled.
Yeah.
And it could almost create like an NFL situation in the future where you move the grand final across to the different areas, different cities can enjoy that. But just
on that though, like if you go to Melbourne, right, and you go to the MCG, you might get 100,000 in there. You do the atmosphere gets diluted a bit because it's an oval ground, but then they cheer when you've knocked the ball on.
Because they don't know
the rules. So I think in terms of getting the right atmosphere, like going to the states.
It has to be a rectangular stadium.
Yeah. Rectangular, and I think they need to have a fair concept of the game.
Or maybe New Zealand, maybe a grand final in Auckland. This could kick it off in the future for our Kiwi cousins there. But having the competition now based here in Queensland, how much do the Queensland teams have to take advantage of this? Because they won't have to play away games for the rest of the year, essentially. Yeah,
it's a huge advantage. And also, they get to go back to their own homes and,
sleep in your own bed.
Sleep in your own bed, be with your family, walk your dog, those types of things. So it's a fantastic advantage for those guys. I did the maths, actually, the other day. If Broncos win their last 8 games, they could finish 8th.
Well, there it is.
We need a lot of other things to go our way, but there's hope. There's always hope.
Yeah, no, we can do that.
Only got to beat Penrith, I think.
Yeah, I think there's Penrith. I think we played Newcastle twice. There's opportunity.
He's not playing.
Yeah,
and they nearly beat Penrith early in the year.
Yeah.
There's up, mate. Glass half full. Glass half
Yeah,
full.
see?
You've got to play the Cowboys still as well, too.
But on
straight.
the flip side to that, like if you look, and I know Melbourne Storm are a good team regardless of where they prep, but they said going to Twin Waters last year to get away from COVID was probably the best thing for them.
Yeah.
So they were in that camp environment all year.
They created their own fun there.
It actually might galvanise some of these Sydney clubs.
Yeah.
And just on the Broncos talk, Payne Haas, mega-year deal, 10-year deal, $1 million a season. Thoughts on that, guys?
I wish that was around when I was playing. I don't know if I would have received one, but geez, it's a great opportunity for him. I think people have been talking about it, saying that it's almost a cheap deal. So the way he's progressing as a player and he's getting better, if he's the best player in our competition in 5 years, he's still getting paid what he got paid at the start of it. So if it can happen, it'd be great to have a player like Payne Haas around to really build a team around and see him grow and develop into. I'm sure he'll grow and develop into a player like Petro Sivanasiva, very similar body type, and I think we'll get the same presence as well. So if it can happen, it'll be great to see.
So people talk about the comparison between him and Tamalolo deal. Tamalolo comes off his deal at 34.
Yeah.
Payne would come off his at 31. So that's a positive for a 10-year deal with him. He is a special player. Got a motor on him for a big man.
Amazing.
Like probably the biggest motor I've seen. And if you look back, one of the biggest signings the Broncos ever made in its history was Glenn Lazarus.
Yep.
Right? When it came, New South Wales prop came up, they won a grand final 92, 93. He is a special player in his own right. I think someone like Adam Reynolds came to the club knowing that he had Payne Haas there as someone to get the forward pack forward. So I think he's going to bring quality players to the club. I guess the unknowns is just, does his body cope?
Yeah.
And I think with the engine that you see and the motivation and the competitiveness in him, I don't have any issues.
Yeah, well, I watched him in that Sharks game and he was absolutely brilliant for the Broncos and really led by example and really put his body on the line, even knowing that New South Wales team was getting picked that evening. He still went out there and gave the Broncos everything he had out there on the field. So, if he's doing that now in a team that's not going so well, I'm sure that we can build a great team around him in the future, and I'm sure that he will reap the rewards, and I'm sure that at some point in time he'll be holding up that trophy.
But it is a gamble, though, right? Like, he's had off-field issues as well. Like, he's missed chunks of the season due to integrity investigations. Yeah. But it is a gamble, but I guess
look, it's a risk on... It's a risk on both sides, right? Yeah. So, I mean, it gives him security.
Yeah.
But at the same time...
He could get more money.
He could get more money. And then he's got to be confident that the club's going to be successful again, which, we all think it can be. So it's a risk on both sides. Obviously, if a club's going to invest that money in an individual, then obviously off-field behaviour is part of that as well.
Yeah.
No more to say?
No.
Final tip before we go, State of Origin. Queensland, can we win? Do we win? How much by?
Queensland by 3 points.
3 points?
Yeah.
Like a toe-poking sort of...
First half field goal, maybe?
First half field goal.
Josh Papali'i, 2-point field goal after their...
There you go.
Look, obviously, you know where our heart is. I think the key will be the 6, 7 and 1. They got to execute their plays, and if they do that, then I think Munster responds and man of the match.
I think you throw Ben Hunt into that as well. A bit of creativity around the middle. So, yeah, I think that's fine in general. If they really stand up, I'm sure that we can get some points on the board and win by 3.
Hopefully it turns out that case in the historic match on the Gold Coast, and the only place to see it live, exclusively free, right here on Channel 9. Follow NRL on 9 for all your latest details ahead of the Origin 3 match on the Goldie.